silent farmer gave her everything. The morning was cold enough to sting the skin. A thin layer of frost covered the dirt road leading into the small farming town, and the sky hung low and gray, as if it were tired of watching the same quiet place day after day. Hardly anyone was awake yet. Most people here rose with the sun, and the sun was still hiding. No one noticed the woman at first. She came from the east, stumbling slowly along the road. Each step looked painful, like her body was arguing with her will to keep going. Her coat was torn at the sleeve and one shoe was missing. The other dragged behind her, worn thin at the heel. Dried blood darkened the edge of her hairline and her face was pale, almost the same color as the sky. She did not cry out. She did not call for help. She simply walked, or tried to. Her name was Clara. She had practiced saying her name quietly during the long journey, as if repeating it would keep her real. Clara, Clara Hayes. The last name was new, written on a paper folded so many times the creases had nearly torn through. That paper was still tucked inside her coat, pressed close to her chest, like it was the only thing holding her together. It was the letter. The letter promised her a husband, a home, and a future. It promised safety. It said there was a man waiting for her in this town, a farmer who wanted a wife, who needed a family. It said she would not be alone anymore. None of that was true. By the time Clara reached the edge of town, her vision had started to blur. The houses appeared far apart, standing like strangers who refused to look at one another. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, thin and weak. Somewhere a dog barked once and then went quiet. Her knees gave out near a wooden sign that welcomed travelers, though the paint was faded and the words barely showed. Clara fell forward into the dirt. The cold ground soaked through her clothes, but she barely felt it. Pain had become something distant, like noise from another room. She tried to stand again. Her hands shook too badly. A wagon passed on the road, its wheels creaking. The driver glanced down, slowed, then looked away. He told himself she was probably drunk or not his problem. The wagon moved on. Another person walked past later, pulling a basket. That woman paused, stared, then tightened her shawl and hurried away. She would talk about it later, Clara knew. They would all talk, but not yet. The town had rules, even if they were never written down. Strangers were watched, trouble was avoided, and injured people brought questions no one wanted to answer. Clara lay there for a long time. She thought about standing again, but her body would not listen. Her breath came shallow and uneven. Each time she closed her eyes, memories pushed in, faces, voices, promises spoken too easily and broken too fast. She forced her eyes open again, afraid that if she slept, she would not wake. That was when the farmer saw her. He had come into town earlier than usual, driving his old cart to deliver grain. He preferred early mornings because fewer people spoke to him then. Silence fit him better than words ever had. His name was Eli Mercer. People in town described him as quiet, but that was not the full truth. He was not just quiet, he was careful. Every word felt heavy to him, so he used them sparingly. He had learned long ago that speaking less caused fewer problems. Eli noticed the woman because she did not belong. She was lying near the road, still as stone, and something about that stillness felt wrong. He pulled the cart to a stop. The horse snorted softly, steam rising from its nose. For a moment, Eli stayed where he was. He had learned to mind his business. That lesson had been taught to him more than once, and not kindly. Then the woman moved, just slightly. Her fingers twitched in the dirt like she was reaching for something she could not see. Eli climbed down from the cart. He approached slowly, boots crunching on frozen ground. Up close, he could see how bad it was. The bruises were old and new, layered like history written on skin. Her lips were cracked. Her breathing sounded thin. She looked young, though life had already worn her down. When her eyes fluttered open, they were filled with fear first, then confusion. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. "It's all right," Eli said, his voice rough from disuse. The sound startled her. She flinched, then winced in pain. Eli immediately held up his hands, palms open, showing he meant no harm. He crouched beside her, keeping a respectful distance. He did not touch her yet. "You're hurt," he said simply. She nodded once. That small movement seemed to take all her strength. Her gaze drifted to his cart, then back to his face like she was trying to decide if he was real. Eli noticed the paper slipping from her coat pocket. It was worn and creased. He did not reach for it. "Can you stand?" he asked. She shook her head. That was all he needed to know. Eli looked around. A few people were beginning to stir, doors opening, voices carrying faintly through the cold air. He knew what would happen if they saw her like this. Questions, accusations, delay. He made his decision quietly. "I'm going to help you," he said. "All right." Eli climbed back up and turned the horse away from town, heading toward his farm instead. He did not look back. The road to his land was narrow and quiet. Fields stretched out on either side, empty for the season. The farmhouse stood alone at the end, weathered but strong, built by hands that believed in lasting things. Clara drifted in and out of awareness as the cart moved. The motion made her dizzy, but the blanket was warm, and for the first time in days, no one was pulling her, pushing her, or demanding anything from her. When they arrived, Eli carried her inside. The farmhouse smelled of wood, earth, and something simple cooking on the stove. He laid her on the bed in the spare room, one that had not been used in years. He fetched water, clean cloths, and set them nearby. Clara tried to sit up. Pain shot through her side, and she cried out softly before she could stop herself. The sound surprised them both. "You don't have to move," Eli said. "You're safe here." Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes, but she did not wipe them away. She was too tired to hide anymore. Eli hesitated in the doorway, unsure what to do next. He had helped animals before. People were harder. "I'll get help if you want," he said. "A doctor." "All right," he said, understanding enough. "Then we'll take it slow." Clara woke to the sound of quiet movement, not voices. The room was dim, lit only by pale morning light slipping through thin curtains. For a moment she did not know where she was. Her body felt heavy, stiff, and sore, as if every part of her had argued through the night and lost. She tried to move her arm. Pain answered immediately. A soft sound escaped her lips before she could stop it. The movement in the other room paused. Footsteps approached, slow and careful. A man appeared in the doorway holding a cup of water. He did not rush toward her. He did not stare. He simply stood there as if waiting for permission to exist in the same space. "You're awake," he said quietly. Clara watched him closely. Her mind searched for danger out of habit, measuring his posture, his tone, his distance. He stayed near the door, not blocking it, not stepping closer than needed. "Yes," she whispered. Her throat burned, the word barely audible. He nodded as if that was enough. He set the cup on a small table beside the bed. "Water," he said. "Drink slow." Some spilled, but he did not comment. He simply waited, eyes lowered, giving her the dignity of not being watched too closely. When she finished, exhaustion settled over her again. She leaned back, closing her eyes. "My name's Eli," he said after a moment. "I own this farm." "Clara, when you're ready." He cleaned her wounds with care, asking permission before touching her. When she winced, he stopped. When she nodded, he continued. He never rushed. She noticed things in small details. He kept his sleeves rolled down even when warm. He flinched slightly at sudden sounds. When he spoke, it was slow, chosen. "You don't talk much," she said once, her voice still weak. He almost smiled. Almost. "I listen better that way." He thought for a long moment before answering. "You needed help." Her hands trembled as she pulled it out. The ink was smudged, the edges worn. She unfolded it slowly, even though she knew every word by heart. Eli noticed the change in her. "You don't have to show me," he said. "I know," she replied, "but you should know why I came here." The people who took advantage of her hope. She did not give every detail. Some things were still too sharp to touch. Eli listened without interruption. His face did not harden with judgment. His eyes did not wander. When she finished, the room felt fuller, like the truth had taken up space and refused to be ignored. "You don't owe anyone here anything," he said finally. "Not me. Not this town." When she woke, the calm stayed with her for a few seconds longer than usual. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm. Eli worked the fields and the barn. Clara rested, then slowly began to help with small things when her strength allowed. Folding cloths, sorting seeds, sitting on the porch and watching the land breathe under the sun. They did not talk constantly. Some mornings passed with only a few words. Other days, something would open between them unexpectedly. "What's that tree?" she asked once, pointing toward the edge of the field. "Apple," he said. "Planted it years ago." The town, however, did not stay quiet forever. Clara noticed Eli tense the first time someone rode up the dirt path, a neighbor checking fences. Eli spoke to him briefly, blocking the view of the house with his body. Clara stayed inside, heart racing, old fears knocking loudly. "They know I'm here," she said later. "They'll know something," Eli replied. "They always do." She turned to Eli. "I don't know what comes next." She could walk from the house to the barn without stopping to rest. The pain had not disappeared, but it no longer ruled her every movement. Healing, she learned, was not a straight path. Some days felt light and hopeful. Other days brought heaviness she could not explain. Eli never rushed her through either kind of day. One afternoon, Clara insisted on helping more. She followed Eli into the barn, the smell of hay and earth filling the air. Sunlight streamed through the wooden slats, drawing soft lines across the floor. "I can do small things," she said, sensing his hesitation. "I want to." It was simple work, but it made her feel useful in a way she had not felt in a long time. As she wiped dirt from the metal, her thoughts drifted. Work kept her hands busy, but her mind often wandered backward. Sometimes memories arrived without warning. A voice raised too suddenly. The sound of boots on hard ground. When that happened, Clara's breathing would change, shallow and fast. Eli noticed every time. He never asked questions right away. He would pause his work, give her space, and wait. Often that was enough. One evening after supper, Clara sat at the small table while Eli fixed a loose chair leg. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. "Did you always live here?" she asked. "Yes," Eli replied. "Born not far from this house. But I didn't know where I would belong." She realized something then. The letter had brought her here, but it did not define her anymore. The next day, Eli showed her the far field. They walked slowly, the grass brushing against her ankles. He explained how the land changed with the seasons, how patience mattered more than force. "People think farming is about control," he said, "but it's really about listening. You're good at that." "Not every detail, but enough." "I believed them," she said quietly. "I believed someone wanted me." Hearing someone else place the blame where it belonged shifted something deep inside her. The town, however, continued to press in around the edges. One morning, Eli returned from town quieter than usual. He set his hat down slowly. "They asked about you," he said. Clara felt her chest tighten. "What did you say?" Eli answered simply, firmly, revealing nothing more than necessary. Clara stayed back, heart pounding. When the door finally closed, she let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "They'll keep talking," she said. "I know," Eli replied, "but talk doesn't decide your life." "I don't want to be a burden," she said suddenly. He frowned. "You're not. Not just as a quiet farmer, but as someone who carried his own quiet wounds." "I don't feel left behind here," she said softly. His breath caught just slightly. The next weeks brought change. Clara grew stronger. She laughed more. Sometimes she even forgot to be afraid. She helped in the garden, learned the rhythms of the farm. She began to imagine staying, not as someone hiding, but as someone choosing. One afternoon, while repairing a fence together, Clara slipped and nearly fell. Eli caught her arm instinctively, then froze, worried he had crossed a line. "It's okay," she said, steadying herself. "Thank you." As the sun set, painting the sky in soft colors, Clara realized something important. Healing was not just about mending the body or surviving the past. It was about learning to trust the present. And slowly, quietly, she was doing just that. At first, it had been easy for people to ignore rumors, a stranger passing through, a visitor staying a few days. But weeks had passed and Clara was still there. She walked the dirt paths now, slowly but with growing confidence. Sometimes she went into town with Eli to buy supplies. Other times she stayed behind, watching from a distance as the world moved on without rushing her. Eyes followed her wherever she went. They were not always unkind, but they were curious. Curious eyes could be just as heavy. Clara felt it in the way conversations paused when she entered a shop, in the way voices dropped when she passed. No one spoke directly to her yet, but she knew it was coming. Towns like this did not keep secrets for long. Eli noticed everything. He walked slightly ahead of her in town, not blocking her path, but close enough that anyone watching could see she was not alone. He did not hold her arm or guide her like she was fragile. He trusted her strength, and that trust mattered more than protection. One afternoon, as they left the general store, a woman stepped forward. She was older, her face lined by years of sun and hard work. Her tone was polite but careful. "You're the one staying at Mercer's farm," the woman said. Clara felt her stomach tighten, but she lifted her chin. "Yes." The woman studied Clara's face, perhaps looking for weakness, perhaps finding something else instead. "Well," she said at last, "I suppose everyone deserves a place to heal." She stepped aside and let them pass. Clara exhaled only when they were a good distance away. "You didn't have to say anything," Eli said gently. "I wanted to," she replied. "I'm tired of hiding." It was polite but firm. Systems did not like uncertainty. They liked names, places, explanations. "They could make me leave," Clara whispered. Eli folded the letter carefully. "Not without reason." "Then we'll tell the truth." He spoke even less than usual, but his presence was steady. One morning he surprised her by speaking firmly. "If anyone asks, you don't answer alone." Eli noticed her shaking hands. "You don't have to speak," he told her. "I will." Clara answered when she could, her voice steady despite her fear. She spoke about arriving injured, about being helped, about wanting nothing more than a chance to recover and work honestly. When someone suggested she was taking advantage of Eli, the room shifted. Before Clara could speak, Eli stood. "That's enough," he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried. "She didn't ask me for anything," he continued. "I offered, that was my choice, and I'd make it again. I've been quiet long enough." She spoke with others, careful but honest. Each small interaction rebuilt a part of her that had been taken. One evening, as they walked back from the fields, Clara stopped. "You gave up your peace for me." But something important had shifted. Clara was no longer just surviving. She was standing. Time moved forward in a quiet, steady way, like the seasons on the farm. Nothing changed all at once, but everything changed enough. Clara no longer woke every morning with fear sitting heavy in her chest. Some days it was still there, waiting in the corners of her thoughts, but it no longer ruled her. She had learned how to breathe through it, how to ground herself in small, real things. The sound of birds at dawn, the feel of soil between her fingers, the way the light fell across the fields in the late afternoon. The farm felt like home now. Not a perfect one and not one she had planned for, but a real one. One built slowly, day by day. She worked beside Eli most mornings. They did not rush. Farming had taught them both that rushing usually led to mistakes. Clara learned when to plant, when to wait, and when to let things be. She learned that effort mattered, but patience mattered more. Eli watched her grow stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. He noticed how she stood taller, how her voice carried more confidence when she spoke. He did not comment on it. He simply made space for it. Their relationship did not change in sudden or dramatic ways. There were no bold declarations or promises made under the stars. What they shared grew quietly, like roots deepening underground. They shared meals at the small wooden table. Some were silent, others filled with simple conversation. Clara learned which topics made Eli thoughtful and which made him smile. Eli learned when Clara needed company and when she needed space. There were moments when the past tried to return. A loud noise in town once made Clara freeze, her breath catching. Eli noticed immediately. He did not touch her. He simply stood nearby and spoke calmly about the weather, about nothing at all, until her breathing slowed again. "Thank you," she said later. "You don't have to thank me," he replied, "but I want to." She held the paper for a long time before showing it to Eli. "Well," he said after reading it, "that settles that." She was no longer the injured stranger or the woman who appeared. She was Clara, who helped at the market, who worked the fields, who smiled back when greeted. Not everyone welcomed her warmly. That was all right. She had learned that acceptance did not need to be universal to be real. One evening, as summer leaned toward autumn, Clara stood alone at the edge of the field. The sky was painted in soft colors and the air smelled of harvested grain. She thought about the girl she had been when she first arrived, frightened, hurt, unsure she would survive. That girl felt distant now, but not forgotten. Eli joined her, standing beside her without speaking. "I was thinking," Clara said, breaking the quiet, "about how close I came to giving up." "I know." The farmhouse was warmer, not just from the fire, but from the life lived inside it. Clara hung curtains she had sewn herself. Eli repaired things that had been broken for years. They worked as a team, though neither had named it that way. On one quiet night, Clara sat by the fire, reading. Eli was across the room, mending a tool. The silence between them felt comfortable, chosen. "I never thanked you properly," Clara said suddenly. "For what?" No promises spoken aloud. No turning point anyone else would notice, but something settled into place. Years later, people would tell the story differently. They would say a quiet farmer saved a broken woman. They would say kindness changed her life. The truth was simpler. Two people met at a moment when they both needed something they did not know how to ask for. One needed help. The other needed purpose. They gave what they could, quietly and without expectation. Clara never became someone else. She became more herself. Eli never stopped being quiet. He simply learned that silence could hold more than loneliness. Together, they built a life that did not need to be explained or defended. It existed because they chose it every day. And that was everything.